All right, so let's get to Dr. King's education. So Dr. King went to Morehouse, which is, an awesome black college, historically black college in Atlanta, Georgia. And so he studies sociology there. So Cohn says, quote, throughout the study of sociology under the direction of Walter Shivers, and other professors at Morehouse, Martin came to see that racism was not primarily personal, behavioral or something of that nature, but structural, and thus linked to the political economy of capitalism. This is Cohn on page 26. Cohn continues, as Martin became less antagonistic toward whites from painful experiences that he had in his youth, during college, he became more antagonistic toward religion. The relationship between religion and education was not always clear to Martin, although he grew up in the church and had an inner urge to enter the ministry during high school. His exposure to modern thinking at Morehouse created many doubts in his mind about the truth value of religion in a scientific world. The critical discourse of the secular disciplines seemed to conflict with the claims of religion. He was especially repelled by the emotionalism he observed at Ebenezer and other black churches. Quote, this is King talking here. He says, quote, I had doubts that religion was intellectually respectable, unquote, he recalled later. Quote, I revolted against the emotionalism of Negro religion, the shouting and the stamping. I didn't understand it and it embarrassed me, unquote. That was why he initially rejected the ministry as a vocation, and he wanted to become a doctor and later a lawyer. However, Benjamin Mays, president of Morehouse and a well-known advocate of civil rights, and Morehouse professor of religion, George Kelsey, demonstrated to Martin that the ministry could be socially relevant and intellectually stimulating. So this is from Cohn on page 26 through 27. He went to Morehouse, but his education didn't stop at Morehouse. So he goes with this new insight, this new revelation that, it could be socially relevant religion and it could be intellectually stimulating. He matriculates at Crozier Seminary. So here's another Cohn quote here. He says, quote, in several classes, King heard about Mahatma Gandhi's successful nonviolent movement in India, but more important were lectures on Gandhi by the noted pacifist A.J. Musk and by Mordecai Johnson, then president of Howard University, following his visit to India. This is Cohn on page 28 and 29. There is also some influence with Gandhi's nonviolence coming from Dr. Rev. James M. Lawson Jr. He's actually come to LMU. I think he was actually here the first year I was in the graduate program. Later King, after Crozier, he enrolls at another university and he pursues his PhD. So he matriculates into Boston University, where he focuses on his PhD in, some sources say philosophical theology and some sources say systematic theology. I think both are true. It probably is just depends on which way you're emphasizing what he studied there. So He liked the liberal theological thinking he encountered at both places, Crozier and Boston, right? And he says, liberalism delivered him from the, quote, fundamentalism, unquote, he grew up with at Ebenezer and set him on the road toward, quote, a serious intellectual quest for a method to eliminate social evil, unquote. Martin also explored theological and philosophical treatises on the question of why evil exists. He was particularly impressed by his systematic theology teachers, George Davis of Crozier and L. Harold DeWolf of Boston, who were probably the chief reasons why he chose systematic theology for his major concentration in his PhD studies. Both espoused similar points of view, which King found congenial to his own emerging theological perspective. They were representatives of, quote, evangelical liberalism, unquote, which rejected the neo-orthodoxy of Karl Barth by stressing an openness to modern culture and the possibilities of good in humanity. King's study of Walter Rauschenbusch's Christianity and the Social Crisis, 1907, moved him deeply, especially Rauschenbusch's interpretation of the Hebrew prophets and, quote, the social aims of Jesus, unquote, Cone 29. I know that the evangelical liberalism seems like a bit of an oxymoron these days, but it also helps to think of liberalism as something completely different, not completely, but largely different than what you think of in regards to the political sphere of today as far as liberals and conservatives. So the two sort of antithesis streams of thought here would be like fundamentalism and, you know, liberalism, or the neo-fundamentalism was kind of like a hybrid in between. But